You never forget the first morning your own home feels like a stranger's house. But you really never forget the moment you reach for your bedroom door and find it locked from the inside. I stood there, coffee cooling in my hand, listening to laughter coming from behind my door. Not mine. Megan's, my daughter-in-law's laughter echoing in the space I built, wearing the blue robe I once thought I'd grow old in. She'd taken my place right down to my slippers. For a second, I thought this had to be a bad dream. But then I saw the box by the wall my wedding album packed and taped with a note on top. For Evelyn. My son Ben's handwriting, quick and guilty. No explanation. Just eviction wrapped in masking tape. I glanced out the window searching for something familiar. But even the rose bushes were wild, forgotten. The wind tangled them into knots like a memory you can't unravel. I could see Megan's car parked in my spot. I could smell her perfume from the hallway. And I realized my family had rewritten the rules overnight. And somehow I'd become the outsider. What would you do if your own child locked you out so his wife could move in? Would you fight? Or would you vanish and let them wonder forever? I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I simply stared at that locked door and wondered how many secrets were being whispered on the other side. And if maybe this betrayal had started long before the key ever turned, because sometimes the cruelest betrayals aren't loud. They're quiet, deliberate, and hidden behind a door you once called your own. Ever been replaced in your own home? Drop a comment. You're not as alone as you think. People say a house remembers every secret ever whispered inside it. I used to believe that until my own home started keeping secrets from me. It happened so gradually, you could almost call it kindness. After Ben and Megan's wedding, they asked to stay just a few weeks. Ben smiled. It's only temporary, Mom. Megan baked lemon bars, called me Evie like we were sisters. That's how it always starts, isn't it? But weeks bled into months. My kitchen became Megan's command center. My garden, where Ben once helped plant snapdragons, was left to wild clover. The garage filled with their moving boxes, and my old Thanksgiving platters vanished. We donated those. Megan chirped. No one uses them anymore. It was subtle at first. New towels in the bathroom. My old bathrobe missing family photos replaced by generic prints. Megan picked up at the flea market. Ben was always too busy to talk. Megan helped by reorganizing drawers, moving my things into boxes labeled storage, in careful, unfamiliar handwriting. But the strangeness ran deeper. One night I heard Megan on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low. He still thinks it was your father's fault. If only he knew. I froze hard, racing. Whose fault? What did she mean? Later, I found Megan in the garage with a stack of old legal documents from my late husband's office papers I'd never seen before. She smiled, but her eyes slid away. Family history is so complicated, don't you think, Evelyn? She said, almost as if daring me to ask. The next day, Ben handed me a form for a routine home insurance update. The signature line already had a sticky note. Just sign here, Mom. Megan's dad says it'll save everyone trouble. Something in the way Ben said it, like he was quoting someone else, like he was following someone's script. The more Megan smiled, the less I felt at home. Once I caught her staring at my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. She picked it up, turned it over, then put it down without a word. It was all so strange, so calculated. One evening, Megan handed me a cup of tea I didn't ask for. You know, she said quietly, not every mother gets to keep her house forever. It's nothing personal. When did your home stop feeling safe? When did your child stop sounding like your own? There was a moment staring at the steam rising from that cup when I wondered if I was missing something, some hidden game being played behind my back. I started locking my bedroom door at night, counting the silverware, keeping track of my own things. A home full of strangers, and the one person I loved most was suddenly so far away. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was never about me. That maybe, just maybe, I'd been pulled into a story that started long before Megan ever walked through my door. Has your family ever made you feel like an outsider in your own life? Let me know, maybe together we'll figure out when it all began. The truth is, betrayal almost never happens, all at once. It comes in slow leaks words, unsaid sideways glances, and doors quietly closed behind your back. In my house, it started with small things and grew into a storm I didn't see coming. I still remember the Sunday morning Megan called her friends for brunch. Her friends, not mine. Loud and laughing in the dining room. I'd set for every family holiday. She wore my blue robe sitting at the head of the table, pouring mimosas like a woman who owned the place. I stood in the kitchen, my back pressed to the wall, clutching a dish towel as if it could anchor me to the life I used to have. Ben passed by, barely meeting my eyes. It's just easier to let her do her thing, Mom. Megan likes order. Order. That word clanged in my chest. My home had never been chaotic, but now, order meant my voice disappeared. Megan's order was the slow erasure of everything that made this place mine. That afternoon, I found a box of my keepsakes. Family photos, letters from Ben's childhood, a quilt my mother made stacked in the hallway, with a note. "Don't worry, Evie, we'll keep these safe in storage." The exclamation point felt like a knife. I wanted to scream to make Ben see how wrong it was, but when I looked at him, all I saw was a man worn down by someone else's will. It's not forever, Mom. Megan says it'll just make things simpler. But that night I heard Megan whispering on the phone again, her voice hushed and urgent. No, he still doesn't know. He thinks it was my father's company that got cheated, but it doesn't matter now. We're in. She must have thought I was asleep. But every word seared itself into my memory. The next day, Megan brought home documents in a faded folder. Old contracts, some with my late husband's name scrawled in sharp blue ink. Just routine paperwork, Evelyn. My dad likes to keep things neat for taxes, she said, flashing that too-sweet smile. I stared at the signature, the same looping letters I'd watched my husband write for decades. Suddenly, it felt like everyone in this house knew something I didn't. I tried to talk to Ben. "Did your father-in-law ever mention your dad about the company?" Ben shrugged, looking past me. He said Dad was a talented man. Said the business was complicated. That's all. But I saw the way his jaw tightened, the flash of guilt behind his eyes. Ben was a good man, but he was drowning in a current stronger than either of us understood. That week, my old friend Carol, a lawyer, who once helped us with Dad's estate, called to check in. I mentioned Megan's paperwork, the pressure to sign things I didn't understand. Carol went silent, then asked if she could stop by. "Some contracts are more dangerous than they look, Evie," she warned. When Carol arrived, she asked to see the folder. As she read, her frown deepened. "This is no routine update. If you sign here, you lose full control of the house. And look at this. There are references to old settlements between your husband and Megan's father. Did you know about this?" I shook my head cold, creeping up my spine. "No, he never told me. After everything fell apart, we just moved on. Or tried to." Carol circled a name on the documents, a signature I didn't recognize. Steve Dalton. He was your husband's secretary, wasn't he? This name comes up everywhere, Evie. Suddenly it hit me this betrayal wasn't just happening now. It had roots tangled in years I tried to forget. But Megan was relentless. She started locking the pantry at night, moving my food to a separate shelf. "You're welcome to use whatever you want, Evelyn. But let's keep things tidy, okay? Order, always order." One evening, Megan stood in the doorway, watching me dust the family photo wall. "You know," she said, "not every woman is meant to be the matriarch forever. Sometimes you have to let go before it's taken from you." She left before I could answer her words, hanging in the air like smoke. Ben grew distant, answering my questions with empty reassurances, avoiding real conversation. I caught him reading emails from Megan's father, his face grim. Once I found him sitting alone in the garage staring at a faded photo of his dad. When I asked what was wrong, he just shook his head. "Nothing, Mom. It's all just business." I started to keep a notebook tracking every odd conversation, Every document Megan brought home, every locked drawer, every time Ben avoided my gaze. I needed something to hold on to, some proof that I wasn't just losing my mind. But at night, lying awake in my small guest room, I wondered if the biggest betrayal of all wasn't what Megan was doing, but what Ben wasn't. He'd stopped fighting for me, stopped fighting for us. How do you fight for your family when the battle started before you even knew it? What do you do when you realize you're not just being replaced, you're being erased? Ever watched a secret destroy a family? Leave your story in the comments. Maybe together we'll figure out how to stop history from repeating itself. By late spring, the house felt less like a home and more like a chessboard. Each room a square every day, a silent move towards something I couldn't see. Megan's rules became law. No cooking after 8. No guests without notice. No family dinners unless she set the table herself. I tried to adapt, biting my tongue when she rearranged my spice rack or banned my old Sunday pot roast. "It's just simpler this way," Megan would say. "You don't want more mess, do you, Evelyn?" But it wasn't about mess. It was about erasing the past, my past, one memory at a time. One rainy afternoon, I found Megan in the study, poring over a stack of faded contracts and bank statements. The papers belonged to my late husband, kept locked away for years. I asked what she was looking for. Megan smiled, but her voice was all business. "Oh, just some old paperwork for my dad. He said your husband used to sign all the important deals for his company." Small world, huh? Her words hung in the air, heavy and cold. The small world wasn't small at all. It was full of old rumors and wounds that had never quite healed. That night, as I sat alone in the living room, I realized I'd never really known the whole story behind my husband's last months at work. Only that the company folded, and that Mr. Fisher, Megan's father, blamed him for the collapse. Now, years later, that old grudge had found its way back under my roof. Ben grew more distant. He started taking long phone calls outside, coming home, late, glancing nervously at Megan, before answering even my simplest questions. Once I overheard Megan hissing at him. "Your mom just needs to cooperate. You want peace, don't you? Don't you want to finally move on from your father's mistakes?" Something was shifting. I noticed my mail was opened before I got it. Megan set up a joint family account at the bank without asking. One day, she gave me a folder, smiling brightly. "We just need your signature, Evelyn. It's standard stuff. My dad says it'll help everyone." Inside were legal documents transferring the deed to the house, removing my name, replacing it with Ben and Megan's. My heart raced. "Why do we need to do this?" I asked, voice trembling. Ben shuffled his feet, eyes on the floor. "It's just for insurance, Mom. Nothing's really changing, but everything was changing. Carol, my lawyer friend, urged me not to sign anything. There's a lot you don't know, Evie. This goes deeper than just paperwork." I started searching for answers quietly. I called Carol and asked her to look into my husband's old business files. Meanwhile, Megan upped her game. She changed the locks on the office. Ben went along with it, apologizing with empty words. "It's just easier for now, Mom. Trust me." That evening, Olivia, my granddaughter, came to visit. She wandered into my bedroom, returning with a small, dust-covered box I'd almost forgotten. Inside was a bundle of old letters, some addressed to my husband, some to me. One stood out. It was marked personal for Evelyn only. But I didn't open it. Not yet. Megan noticed Olivia holding the box. Her eyes flashed, but her voice was syrup-sweet. "Oh, darling. Those are just boring old papers. Why don't you leave them with Grandma?" Later that night, I caught Ben sitting alone, staring at his father's faded army photo. "I never wanted things to be like this, Mom," he whispered. "But it's too late now, isn't it?" I wanted to reach out, but the space between us had grown too wide. Too many secrets, some his, some mine. Megan moved through the house like a storm, reorganizing, discarding, rebuilding a history that suited her vision. She hosted a brunch for her friends, introducing herself as the woman keeping the family together. I poured coffee, invisible as they toasted to fresh starts and clean slates. I wondered how many fresh starts a mother could survive before disappearing for good. When did my home become a battleground for old debts and new betrayals? What was inside the letter marked for me? And why had my husband kept it hidden all these years? The more I watched, the more I realized this was never just about a house. It was about power, who had it, who lost it, and who would do anything to get it back. Ever had a family secret you were too afraid to open? Share your story. Maybe we're all just waiting for the right moment to find out what comes next. If anyone had asked me back when the garden was still blooming, and Sunday dinners felt safe if I could see a day when my own son would stand on the other side of a battle line, I'd have said never. But here we were, the house divided not by walls, but by secrets, loyalties and wounds that refused to close. Megan's control was now absolute. She set the rhythm of our days, her calendar on the fridge, her rules in every corner. My routines. Morning coffee, late-night tea, even the way I folded laundry, were either improved or streamlined. But beneath every suggestion was a warning. Don't push back. The day started with a surprise. Megan announced, "We'll be having an appraisal today, Evelyn. Just a formality, Dad's sending someone from his old business network." She smiled that politician's smile, but I noticed her grip on her phone tighten. Ben looked tired shadows under his eyes. He didn't argue. He didn't even look at me. The appraiser arrived brisk and efficient, taking notes on every detail. When he left, Megan whispered to Ben, "It's almost done. After this, everything falls into place." I stood in the kitchen, piecing together their words like broken glass, and felt a chill run down my spine. Later, I checked the mailbox, just habit, and found a plain envelope with my name, no return address. Inside, a single note. "Don't sign anything you haven't read. SD. Steve Dalton, the name from those old contracts. My husband's old secretary. Why now? Why me?" I tucked the note into my pocket and returned to the house, suddenly alert to every movement, every whispered conversation. That evening, Olivia stopped by after school. She was quieter than usual, clutching a school project. "Grandma, did you and Grandpa ever have secrets?" I smiled. "Every family has a few." She frowned. "Mom says it's better when women keep quiet." But that doesn't seem fair. Her words stung. Out of the mouths of children, the truth. After dinner, Megan invited her father over for coffee. Mr. Fisher, smooth as ever, praised the new order of the house. He complimented Ben on finally stepping up for his own future. I listened, noticing the edge in his voice when he said future. Before he left, he pressed a thin folder into Megan's hands. "You know what to do." In my room, I finally opened the old box Olivia had found. On top, the letter from my husband, still unopened. I hesitated, heart pounding. Something inside me said, wait. The time wasn't right yet. Beneath the letter was a photograph, my husband, Mr. Fisher, and Steve Dalton, standing outside a building with a giant sold sign. On the back, in my husband's handwriting, "Not all victories are clean." I wondered which man the message was for. Or maybe all of them. Megan knocked on my door that night, gentle but unyielding. "We need to talk about next steps, Evelyn. Things will be easier if you just trust us." Her voice was honey, but her eyes were steel. I nodded, keeping my thoughts to myself. Quiet is its own kind of armor. Later, I heard Ben and Megan arguing in the kitchen. "She's my mother, Meg. This isn't about her, Ben. This is about setting things right for my family, for yours. Or do you want everyone thinking your dad was a thief forever?" Their words twisted in my chest. I lay awake replaying the past holidays, Fight's small kindnesses. Suddenly I remembered the day my husband came home late. Hands shaking, saying only, "Sometimes the people you trust most hold the sharpest knives." At the time I thought he was talking about work. Now I wondered if he'd meant family. Carol called the next morning. "Evie, I've gone through the documents. There's more here than you know. Hidden accounts. Settlements, non-disclosure agreements. If you need me, say the word." I thanked her and hung up. Megan appeared in the hallway, blocking my path. "Are you making trouble, Evelyn?" I held her gaze, just cleaning up some old messes. The appraisal came back quickly, higher than I expected. Megan was delighted. Ben was worried. I heard him in the garage talking on the phone in a low, urgent voice. But what if she fights back? What if she finds out? Later, as I watered what was left of my roses, Olivia watched from the porch. "Grandma, why do you keep planting when nothing grows?" I smiled, brushing dirt from my hands. "Because every season has its own surprises. You never know what might come back." I realized then I wasn't the only one holding secrets. And I wasn't the only one waiting for the perfect moment. The game was still on. But whose move was next? And who in the end would be left with everything or nothing at all? Ever felt like your life was a game, but you never got to see the rules? Tell me, what would you do if you finally held the winning card? Some battles start long before you even realize you're part of them. I used to believe the family drama started the day Megan moved in, but the real war began years before with a handshake, a contract, and a secret no one ever spoke about again. That week the house was buzzing with new tension. Megan pushed harder than ever. "We need to close the deal, Evelyn. Dad wants everything settled before the end of the month. No more delays." Ben looked trapped, hollow-eyed, caught between his wife's ambition and his mother's quiet resistance. A courier arrived with a thick envelope, more contracts, and this time a letter addressed to me. Carol, my lawyer friend, sat across the table as I read. Inside, an old newspaper clipping. "Fisher and Wallace merger collapses. In scandal, millions lost." My husband's name was in the headline. Next to it, a printout of an old email. "Steve, can you confirm the numbers for the Fisher deal? We can't afford another leak. Steve Dalton." That name again echoing from the past. Carol spoke quietly. "Evie, your husband was set up. The financial collapse wasn't his doing. There was a leak information passed to a competitor. Fisher's people blamed your husband, but look at this." She handed me a faded legal memo initialed by SD. The handwriting matched the note I'd received days earlier. My mind reeled memories of late nights, whispered arguments, my husband's distant gaze after the business went under. I remembered the shame, the way neighbors stared, the way Ben's childhood changed overnight. But it wasn't just our family that fell apart. Fisher's empire crumbled too, yet somehow he rebuilt, clinging to his story of betrayal. Megan stormed in as Carol finished. "Are you spreading lies again, Evelyn? My father warned me about you, about your stories. He said your husband would say anything to avoid blame. But now it's our turn. We're fixing what your family broke." Ben looked at me, pain, doubt, and love all mixed in his eyes. "Mom, did Dad ever talk to you about the merger? Did he ever say why it failed?" I shook my head, tears burning. He only ever said he was sorry for not protecting us better. That night I sat in the dark holding my husband's unopened letter. Olivia's words echoing in my mind. "Why do you keep planting when nothing grows?" "Because hope is all I had left." The next day Megan hosted her biggest party, yet a new beginning for the house. Her friends filled the rooms, their laughter loud, oblivious to the storm building beneath the surface. In the middle of the celebration, a sharp knock on the door. Carol and a county sheriff stepped inside. Silence swept the room. Carol read the legal notice aloud. "Effective immediately, the property is under legal review, pending fraud investigation and disputed ownership. All occupants must vacate until further notice." Megan's face blanched. Ben dropped his drink, staring at me as if he'd never seen me before. In the chaos, Megan's father called, her voice booming through the speaker. "Don't panic, there's no proof." Dalton kept his mouth shut. "Remember, this is about winning, not being right." Later in the quiet, Ben approached me. "Is this really about Dad? Or is it just about you and Megan?" I looked at him, my boy lost in the crossfire of old men's grudges. Sometimes the past isn't finished with us, even when we think we've moved on. Olivia hugged me tight, whispering, "I'm glad you're still fighting, Grandma. Some things are worth keeping." That night, alone in my new apartment, I placed the unopened letter on the table. The secrets inside pulsed like a heartbeat. But I still wasn't ready. How much pain can a family carry before someone finally breaks the cycle? What if the truth you've buried is the only thing that can set you free? Ever been blamed for something you didn't do just because the story was easier that way? Share your truth. You never know who might need to hear it. Some truths don't set you free until they're spoken out loud. Sometimes they rip everything wide open first. I sat in my new apartment, rain drumming against the window, the unopened letter from my late husband, trembling in my hands. I read it finally, his words careful, loving, burdened by shame. Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I failed to clear my name while I was still alive. Steve Dalton was the one who leaked the Fisher deal. Not me. He confessed to me in the end, but he was desperate and scared, trapped by his own mistakes. I kept quiet to protect Ben, to avoid dragging you both into a war you never deserved. I'm sorry. Please forgive me for not fighting harder for the truth, for letting our legacy be stained by someone else's lie. My world stopped. For years I'd carried the shame, let it poison my relationship with Ben. Let Megan's family rewrite the story. But the villain had never been my husband, and Steve Dalton, for all his faults, had been another casualty in someone else's game. That night the phone rang, a voice older, raspier, but unmistakable. Mrs. Wallace. It's Steve Dalton. I heard... Things are finally coming out. I'm sorry for everything I did. I've lived with this guilt my whole life. I ruined more than one family. If you want to hear it all, I'll meet you wherever, whenever. We met in a dim diner off the highway. Steve looked tired, defeated, but his eyes were desperate for forgiveness. He didn't make excuses. Mr. Fisher paid me to pass the contract details to a rival. Your husband took the blame because he thought it would spare me, and maybe he thought it would protect Ben, too. He loved his family more than his own name. I listened numb but not angry. Why now? Because you deserve to know. Because the guilt eats at a man more than any punishment. I can't fix what I broke, but I can at least own it. A strange peace settled over me. Not relief, just the end of an ache I'd carried too long. Back home, Ben knocked at my door. His voice shook. Mom Megan and her father want to sue. They're furious, saying you poisoned everything. But I saw Dad's letter. I saw the proof. I'm so sorry I let them erase you from your own life. I just wanted peace. I didn't know it would cost us everything. His tears were real years of guilt pouring out. I hugged him, but not tightly. Some wounds don't heal all the way, Ben. But it matters that you finally stood up. For yourself. For me. For the truth. Megan came by the next morning, rage and fear twisting her face. You've ruined my family, my father's legacy. Wasn't it enough to take my home? I looked at her, and for the first time saw her as a woman trapped by someone else's war, just like I'd been. This was never about a house, Megan. It was about a lie that hurt too many people for too long. I hope you break the cycle for Olivia's sake. She stormed out, and the house finally felt quiet. Not empty, just at peace. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's just the truth finally finding its way home. I called Steve one last time, told him I forgave him. Not for his sake, maybe for mine. That spring, Olivia and I planted new roses in my tiny yard. She asked, "Do you think they'll grow here?" I smiled. Things have a way of coming back when you finally let the light in. Have you ever carried a secret that didn't belong to you? Would you forgive the ones who hurt you, or start over and leave them guessing? For life, a house can be rebuilt. A reputation, maybe. But the scars of betrayal, the deep, silent kind, those take the longest to heal. Spring sunlight spilled across my new kitchen as I unpacked the last moving box. The walls were bare, the windows clean, and my life finally felt like it belonged to me again. I stood in the garden with Olivia, her small hands deep in the dirt. We planted rose bushes side by side, not because we hoped they'd bloom right away, but because hope itself is an act of faith. I found comfort in small rituals, Sunday pancakes for just us, laughter, over board games, the soft hum of a home without secrets. Carol visited, often sharing stories of women she'd helped, mothers, grandmothers, all quietly reclaiming their power after losing everything but themselves. One afternoon, I started writing letters to women like me. Those who'd been replaced, betrayed, erased by the very people they loved. Not out of bitterness, but to say you are not invisible and your story isn't over. I didn't win everything back. The old house stood silent on another street, now full of strangers and new beginnings for someone else. Ben called sometimes, always careful, always grateful. He asked if Olivia could visit. I always said yes, because forgiveness isn't a gift you give for free. But sometimes it's the only thing that lets you move forward. Megan never reached out again. I heard through neighbors that her father's business was under new investigation. I didn't feel triumph, only a quiet relief that the burden was no longer mine to carry. Some endings don't come with fireworks or final words. Sometimes the greatest revenge is learning to let go. Walking away so quietly that all they're left with is the memory of what they lost and the silence you left behind. Our little club of women grew. We shared coffee stories and tears. We found new ways to build families, sometimes from scratch. We laughed about the little things, and we honored our scars not as signs of defeat, but as proof that we survived and grew back stronger. Olivia once asked me, "Grandma, does everyone get a happy ending?" I smiled. Not everyone. But anyone can start a new beginning. That's sometimes even better. I watch the roses out front blooming a little more every day. Each blossom a quiet promise the pain doesn't last forever. Peace does. If you've ever rebuilt your life from scratch or found healing in a place you never expected, share your story below. You never know who you might help or who's waiting to hear that they're not alone. And if you're still in the thick of it, keep going. Sometimes the quietest victories are the ones that echo the longest. And if you think this is where the story ends, think again. Sometimes the next chapter is already blooming right outside your window, by post. Imagine building a life only to be locked out by your own son, and his wife wearing your robe. My son replaced me with his wife, and they packed up my memories like trash. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just disappeared and left them wondering forever. What happens when the mother you erased is the one holding all the secrets? Would you fight back or vanish in silence? Watch my true story. You're not as alone as you think.